Hi there everybody, welcome to another video. On today's video I have this MINI Cooper 2014. This is a petrol automatic. I'm going to be changing the oil and the oil filter. We're also going to top up some screen wash fluid and check the coolant level. So to start with, I had the car running for about 15 minutes to warm up the engine a little bit, and now I'm going to open the bonnet, and you have to pull on these twice as written in there. Okay, that was a bit hard. But once that is done, you can just lift the bonnet here. And there we have access to the engine. Now I'm going to start with screen wash fluid, then move on to the coolant level and antifreeze percentage, and then we'll do the oil and the oil filter. Right, so let's top up some screen wash fluid. I've got some here, ready mixed. You can buy concentrated and mix it yourself, or you can buy it ready mixed and just pour it in here. So that's where the screen wash fluid goes. And as I always say, I recommend putting the proper fluid in there, because if you just put water or water mixed with washing up liquid or something, if it's freezing, it will freeze. Okay, not much was needed there. This car hasn't really been used that much, so that is nice and full. But if you only put water in there, it will freeze, and then you won't get any water coming out your jets. And also sometimes frozen water can expand and crack the tank. So better keep with the proper fluid. It's not expensive. You can buy 5 liters of this ready mixed in any garage or petrol station, and get on with your journey. And keep it in your boot, because you can keep that filled. Now let's check the coolant. The coolant in this car is in this tank. A little bit difficult to see, but I can already see the fluid there. Sometimes if you shine a light, it helps. You can see the fluid down there, but at the same time, what we have to do is open this cap. Now be careful when opening this cap, especially if the car is very hot. I warmed up this car for a bit, but there might be a little bit of pressure in there to get released, so just be careful when you open it. I always open these by pushing it down a bit and sort of keeping it pushed while opening. That's how I open it. These are supposed to be for safety and whatnot, but they can fail, and if they fail in your face, you burn your face. Right, so in there you can see 2 marks. You can see that yellow mark that says max, and then below that there's another one that says min, and you can actually see those. Now my fluid is just above the max. I can see that. If the fluid was not above the max in this tank, that max mark would look really yellow, and you'll be able to see it anyway. I can see the fluid, I can see the marks. And then, so I'm happy with the level. Now I'm just gonna suck some of that antifreeze in here, and this gadget is going to help us see the percentage of antifreeze that we have. So that is showing me about minus 25 degrees or a little bit more. So that means the temperature outside will have to be at minus, say minus 30 for this fluid to freeze. So hopefully that's not going to happen here in the UK. We've had maybe minus 15, but it depends where you live, of course. If you live in a very cold place, Antarctica, where maybe it's minus 40, your antifreeze will have to be rated at minus 40. So here maybe we use 50-50 or 60% antifreeze, 40% water. But if you're in, like I said, Antarctica, you may want to use 90% antifreeze and 10% water, or even 100% antifreeze. So because if you only have water in here, again, if that freezes, if the temperature outside is really cold, -10, it freezes, that will damage your engine and your tank and everything. So it's important to have antifreeze, and it's also it's called anti-corrosion additives, so to help prevent your engine from corroding. If you're in a very hot country, you may use less antifreeze, but you still want to use antifreeze for the purpose of preventing corrosion and whatnot. So I'm happy with this. It says about minus, now it's settled, -27 or so. Also, with this little gadget, you can see the sort of color of the antifreeze, and you can see it's nice and clean. It looks greenish and it's not contaminated and whatnot. So I'm happy to move on from this. Just get the liquid back in there. Put this cover back on. And if you found your coolant was at the minimum, you can top it up a little bit. If you found it was below the minimum, not even in the tank, then you may have a coolant leak somewhere. So that's what you would have to investigate next. And that could be anywhere. So it could be the radiator, it could be the water pump, anything, a torn hose. And the other thing is, if you found you didn't have enough antifreeze, you may want to get it changed. So get a coolant change and get the right amount of antifreeze in there. So now we can move on to the oil and the oil filter. So for that, I'm going to start with opening this cover here. This is where we put the oil, and I'm just going to leave it like that. Especially if you're outside, you don't want anything flying into there, any dirt or anything like that. So we're just allowing some air into the system so we can drain the oil a little bit easier. And we're going to tackle the filter from underneath as well. This is a 3-cylinder engine, by the way, the 1.5 Petrol of the MINI twin power turbo. I particularly don't really like the 3-cylinder cylinder engine much, but anyway, it is what it is. It runs okay. So anyway, let's get on with the job, and my opinion doesn't really matter here. So I'm gonna get the car up and we'll drain the oil. So just before I start draining the oil, we're gonna need this oil filter here. I've got an OX 815/1D Malay one. That's what I have. You can have a different one, different make if you wish, or you can have the genuine BMW. This little kit comes with an O-ring, a new O-ring, a new copper washer, and this little drain plug for the filter. So this we need to remove from the filter housing, and you are going to need one of these, which is a T55, so that fits in there. T55 Torx, and then you can remove the one that is the old one basically. And it says here you ought to tighten this to 5 Newton meters plus 2 Newton meters. So this is a very delicate part. If you over tighten it, normally this gets damaged, the thread here. So be careful with that, because I don't have a torque wrench that goes down to 5 Newton meters, and so 5 Newton meters is very, very small amount of force. Anyway, now we'll get on to draining the oil. So looking at the car from underneath, we have these two covers. With a flathead screwdriver, you can open this little retaining plastic bits here. I've already undone that one, and this other one as well, just like that. Already done that one as well. And we can open those little like compartments that will give us access to the oil filter and the sun plug bolt. We have this sun plug bolt here. That's a 17mm socket we can use, and our filter is up here. It's a bit dark, but that's the center of it that we need to open. Okay, let's drain the oil. Get yourself an oil pan to catch the oil. And also one thing to remember is if that engine's been running a lot for whatever reason, the oil will be very hot. So just remember, the hot oil can also burn you. Right, just got my ratchet there sitting properly so we can crack this open. Shouldn't be too tight anyway. Almost there. Okay, there we are. Now let that drain for a little while, and in the meantime we're gonna tackle the filter. So just a slight thing to be noted, the replacement draining plug for the filter housing here is this one that uses a Torx. However, you may find that the one in the car, the one that was fitted with a different make, maybe the original, has a 13mm. So if you come here and you look up there at your filter, then you may find that it's a 13mm rather than the Torx. So anyway, it happens. Different makes use slightly different styles. So now we're going to get that out and drain the oil from the filter house in there. Okay, we'll let that drain for a few minutes. Right, while we wait, we can replace, this is the old copper washer, that's the new one here. We'll fit that there, so that's ready. This is the old plug for the filter, that's the new one here. So one time last year, I think, while fitting these, I actually damaged it, and so I removed it and I used this one instead. So sometimes I keep it for a little while. Well, as in, I keep it during the service. If I have damaged this one for whatever reason, then you at least have a backup plan. So since then, obviously, I learned that it goes in very, very gently. Otherwise, what happens is if you damage this here, next year it will be hard to remove it. Now it's not the end of the world. You can just use the big socket like we have to do anyway. We have to remove the whole filter housing in order to remove the filter itself. But so it's not the end of the world that you can't remove it. You can leave it there, but it does save a mess, even though I still get a bit of a mess even after draining the oil from the center. So anyway, it is what it is. When you're playing with oil, you get a bit of a mess. Right, I'm gonna put the new drain plug back in, and I put a little bit of grease on the O-ring that's sitting up here, just a bit of multi-purpose grease. We can go ahead and put this in. I'm gonna put it in by hand to avoid damaging anything, because it kind of goes at an angle, and if the first thing you get is your ratchet and start forcing it in there, it's definitely going to get damaged. Okay, that's in. Now I'm just gonna clean that area a little bit and we can remove the housing. Right, I have a 32mm socket. So 32mm, which we're gonna fit there. Okay, just have to make sure it's sitting properly so I can loosen it. But I may need my 2 hands for this, just to crack it open. Okay, I cracked that open. It shouldn't be tight, but then you can just remove it by hand. And there we are. As you can see, a little bit of oil still leaking from there. But that is out. And on the back of this cover, I think there is also a tightening torque. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. We'll have a look in a minute. Usually 25 Newton meters, but we'll see. Okay, filters here. We can just pull it out of there. Shouldn't be too tight to pull it, but sometimes it is. Okay, there we are. It's just plugged in there basically. Now I've got some brake cleaner here. And I'm just rinsing the housing a little bit. Inside and out. Right, it's fairly nice and clean and dry. Now we can take the old O-ring from here. Put the new one. Get it in the correct groove. And then we can get our new filter, plug it in there, like so. And I just got a little bit of multi-purpose grease to go around this O-ring here. Nothing too dramatic, but a little bit of grease there. That way, when we screw this back in, that O-ring, it's going to slide nicely and it's not going to get caught and get damaged basically. Some people may not agree with that, but it is the way I do it. I've been doing it for years. You can use a little bit of the oil that you're actually going to use for the car as well to lubricate a little bit around that rubber. Anyway, we are ready to start fitting things back. One last thing maybe is that this, I've only tightened this with my hand and I can still tighten it a little bit, but maybe not, maybe it's reach a point. So what I'll do is I'll just use my ratchet and just give it an extra turn or so. Okay. that's it really. I only gave it a tiny bit of extra force there. Now the thing is, if you actually get some oil leaking out of here, most likely it's going to be because this is going in the wrong way. Either you put it in slightly on an angle and tightened it the wrong way, but getting it tight to stop a leak, that's not gonna work. It's just, even if I put it in and left it by hand, it's not going to leak. That's what I'm trying to say. So the only way really is going to leak is if you left it, if you put it in the wrong way and the thread got damaged. The other reason would be if you really left it just there. If you put it there and gave it a couple of turns, obviously that's kind of leaving it open. Now here it is actually written, it says 25 Newton meters. It's written on the side there, 25, and it says plus 5 Newton meters. So if you have a torque wrench, go ahead and use it. If you don't, like I have a torque wrench, but I don't normally use it for this. I'm pretty much doing this quite frequently, so I don't normally need to use one. But if it's your first time doing it, or you're gonna do your car regularly from now on, it's a good idea to have a torque wrench, and then you have an idea of how much force to put on that. Now let's get that back in. Okay, so I'm gonna get this in there by hand. It can be a little bit tricky because this bit needs to go into a hole up there. But well, it's a sticking bit of metal that goes in. So normally what you have to do is sort of press it in a little bit and then try to screw this on. But once you get it to catch, so basically you need to screw it while pushing it in, which, as I mentioned, it is a little bit tricky. As you can see, that bit is trying to go into the metal. Okay, I got it in. Now I can screw the filter housing back in and do it by hand as much as you can. That way you know it's going in the right direction, in the correct way. And also you can feel with your finger around the filter to see if there's an even gap around the area that's going in. And that way, again, you're just making sure it's going in the right way. You don't want to damage it. If it was going in slightly at an angle and now I use my ratchet, I will damage it. That's what I'm saying. So anyway, now I'm gonna tighten that, and then we can do our sun plug bolt here. Right, got my filter in there nicely. And last but not least, just rinse the area a little bit here. Sometimes a bit of oil goes around there, the cables and whatnot. But it's nice to leave it nice and clean. Again, I'm using brake cleaner. Well, it doesn't show you there what it is, but I am using this kind of solvent here that I use to rinse oil. It is very good. Obviously we use it to clean brake dust and whatnot, and whatever else. So now we have our sun plug bolt as well. That's been draining for quite some time. Again, get it in there by hand. Now I do have a torque wrench for this one, and I'm going to tighten that to 30 Newton meters. It will not need more than that. Let me just double check this is set to that. Okay. Okay, and that is it. So 30 Newton meters on that, and now we can close these little covers. And we are ready to top up some oil. Okay, well, I might need my two hands to close these, but not rocket science here, just flick the things. That's it. Time to top up some oil. So I'm using 5W30 of this make, Multi-Quip. I would really recommend maybe Mobile One or even Mobile Super 3000 5W30, or they also recommend 0W30 or 5W40 as well. That is in the manual, so look at your manual. That's where you can find the recommendations. It is a little bit dependent on temperature and where you live. So obviously if you live in a very hot country, you may want slightly thicker oil like 10W40 or whatnot. If you live in, again, the North Pole, you may want 0W30 and whatnot. This range, the 5W30, covers a good range. And also the one I usually get is the ACEA A3 or B4. It's not written in here. Or BMW Long Life 01 is recommended. So I'm going to put the oil in here. 4.25 liters in this 1.5 liter 3-cylinder engine. So I'm gonna put the oil in there, and then we'll get the car going. Okay, so I got my 4.25 liters of oil in there. There is no dipstick in this car. The only way for us to measure the oil is with the computer inside. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. Let's close this now. And let's get this car started. So I always like to start the car and just make sure no oil pressure lights come in here, so that way we know there's no oil escaping anywhere. But also you can have a quick visual, obviously outside, just to make sure that you didn't forget something, like, oh no, you forgot to put the oil filter in. And then all the oil will come out very quickly. So it's just things like that do happen, by the way. Things like that do happen. Or people forget to tighten the sump plug bolt or anything like that. Things happen. It's happened to me, so I'm not going to pretend that it hasn't. And so we can go into the... I think you have to let the car warm up a little bit before you can check the oil. Vehicle information, and then vehicle status there, and then we have engine oil level. It says it's okay, but if you click on that, you can start the measurement. However, I can't do it right now because it needs to reach, it says measurement only possible when vehicle is in level ground with engine warm and switched on. So at the moment it's on, obviously, but it's cold, so we'll have to wait a bit for that. But we'll do that. We'll wait for a bit just to show you how it's done. But for now, engine sounds sweet. You can go to the engine bay, just check underneath, make sure there's no obvious oil leaks, there's no oil coming out in quantities, and obviously we haven't got any warning lights here, so it's all good news. So let's wait for this engine to warm up a bit. Right, while the engine was warming up, I was just resetting the service intervals here for the oil, and so I think the engine should be warm enough now. By the way, if you did a service to your car and you want to reset these things, you will probably need a machine like this. This is a Launch Pro. Maybe a little bit too much for somebody who's not doing cars all the time, but there might be, I think there might be a way of resetting the oil from the computer here, so just have a Google on that and you shall find something. Measure engine oil level. Right, let's have a look at this. Okay, it says start, so we'll start measuring the engine oil level. So you can see that happening there. Okay, it's at 44% yet. Okay, so you can see there it's at the max. So it's got like a, that's like a little drawing of a dipstick, and you have the minimum, those two little arrows, and then the maximum, those two little arrows. Anything above is too much oil, basically. You can see the green line, obviously that's showing us the oil level. So max is perfect. If you were checking your oil level halfway through the year or whatever, if that line, that green line, was at the minimum or below, you definitely want to top up a little bit. Well, if you're down here, you definitely want to top up maybe 300 mils, 400 mils, and then check where you are. And if you were in the middle, then you're okay. But yeah, it's worth checking your oil level regularly, because minis have a tendency to consume oil. Especially the older one, the R53, it's almost like it consumes oil quite a lot. Anyway, having said that, we finished service today, and if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. Otherwise, we'll see you all in the next video. So don't forget to like and subscribe and follow. Thank you for watching.